You won't believe why many employers are already preparing for mass layoffs, and they're already preparing their employees for layoffs as well. Today I'm going to break this down because a major provision that was just passed through the House of Representatives is causing some employers to actually let go of people a little early or somewhat premature. I'm going to break this down, explain what is going on, but here's the concern. This is going to impact every single industry out there. It doesn't matter if you work at Target, if you work at Home Depot, if you work on a manufacturing plant, if you are in construction, every single person is about to be impacted. And I'll explain why in just a moment. But first, before I do, all I ask is one thing. It takes 2 seconds. Go ahead, hit that like button if you enjoy these daily updates. And now, let's begin. So one of the big concerns that many Americans have is what is going on with their job. Are they still going to be employed in the next week, month, or even 6 months? Well, that is the big question. Now, all of this has to do with a recent bill that was passed by the House of Representatives. It's the no tax on tips and overtime. Here's the reason why this is such a big deal. This passed with a vote of 215 to 214, just narrowly passing. But it's what is in the bill, the no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. Now I want to read you some stuff, and first I want to explain what is happening in certain industries. Because what we are seeing in the restaurant industry, we're seeing in the service industry, whether you're in housekeeping or you're doing certain landscaping jobs, whatever it may be. Maybe you do haircuts. Okay, tips are a major income source, but it's the overtime provision that has a lot of people questioning whether their job is still safe. Now, I want to read this to you. This is an article from NBC News. It says, opponents have also urged that the exemptions would distribute the tax burden unfairly, with a worker who is paid an hourly wage like a janitor having a higher tax bill than a bartender working at the same restaurant, disadvantaging one group of workers over another for no clear reason. It could also shift the demand for tip jobs and those with overtime, creating shortages of workers in other areas. That's the key. Tipped workers, okay, people that work, let's say, are a janitor. What they're going to do is try to go from janitor to server. They want to get some of the tips. And if the janitor is not in on the tips, which in some restaurants they're not, okay, even the staff in the back, the cook staff, in some cases is not in on the tips. In some cases it's just for the servers and the people that are in the front of the building. I want to keep reading this though. It says reducing taxes on overtime could also lead more employees to be willing to work overtime, which could mean fewer jobs overall in the labor market in certain sectors if employers are able to get additional hours out of their existing employees. That's a big one. We're going to touch on that in a moment. It says workers get a tax benefit, but over time, employers are going to pay a little bit less than they otherwise would have in wages to these workers. With tips, it's shifting the burden of compensation from the restaurant to the employer to the customer. With overtime, that's going to let those employers pay a little bit less in base salary or base wages to those employees. Now, I was reading that earlier on today, and I decided I was going to send a message to a friend of mine. This friend of mine, he has it's a boutique hotel, smaller, probably 80 to 100 rooms, okay? Not a massive one, pretty small, okay, or fairly small. I sent this message to him. I said, hey, if Trump's plan of no taxes on tips and overtime goes through, how do you see this impacting your hotel? Just curious, doing it for a video. This is what he wrote, and I quote, honestly, this would be a blessing for me, and I'll tell you why. We don't have a large staff, only 17 people who work on rotation. I used to employ 21, but reduced the staff size so all employees could work 40 hours per week. Okay, so now all employees are working 40 hours per week, but previously I had 21 employees Now he has 17, reduced it by 4, but now every single employee, instead of working like 32 to 35 hours, they're working a full 40. It goes on to say, if the no tax on overtime goes through, I would likely reduce the staff size down to 12 or 13 and have the employees take on additional roles. It truly would be a win-win for the hotel and the employees that are still working and not having to pay taxes on their overtime pay. Tips will be trickier as the amount an employee earns will be dictated by the customer. But from what I understand by talking with some colleagues at Rotary, they will be reducing their base pay. I might do the same thing, but we will have to see what the industry norm looks like if that time comes. So essentially what he's saying, tips are one animal. We're not going to address that yet because, again, and like this article right here was saying, okay, the tips, it says right here, with tips, it's shifting the burden of compensation from the restaurant or the employer to the customer. So we don't know what it's going to look like for tips. So if somebody could get paid less per hour, but they could make more in tips. Again, we don't know that though. Overtime is pretty self-explanatory. Now, somebody else wrote to me and said this. I was already told to prepare for layoffs. This is the video I did probably 3-4 days ago. Once the bill passed the House of Representatives, somebody wrote in there and said, I was already told to prepare for layoffs. My boss said that if the no tax on overtime bill goes through, then the plant will remove the overtime restriction and allow all employees to work as many hours as they want. But in doing so, the first month will dictate how many workable hours there will be per month. From then, they will determine how many employees are needed to make their deadlines and let the rest of the employees go. So, let's break this one down because, again, this is what I think is troubling. This is why many are preparing for mass layoffs. They know if this bill goes through and allows workers to work as many hours of overtime as possible, and they do not have to pay taxes on their overtime amount. Keep in mind, though, they still have to pay taxes on any income that they earn over 40 hours, but they don't have to pay taxes on their overtime amount. So let's say you make $20 an hour. You work 45 hours a week. Okay, 40 hours of that. Okay, $20 an hour was at $800. That is taxed as normal pay. Okay, no overtime, no nothing. The other 5 hours, right now it would be taxed as overtime income. But if this bill passes, those 5 hours, those will continue to be taxed at base pay, at regular hours, not overtime. Okay, but get this, you get paid $30 an hour, you get time and a half, $30. Guess what? Only $20 of that is taxed as regular income. The other $10, tax-free. Yeah, that's the difference. So, some employers are already telling their employees to just be prepared. Now, I asked another friend of mine, is this something he has heard? And he said yes. He works in the manufacturing space as well, doing like automotive, airplane parts, stuff like that, whatever. Anyway, and he said yes, that is something that they've been hearing, and pretty much for the past week or so, they've been operating with the kind of the assumption that they are all fighting for their job. People are clocking in early. They're not coming in late. Okay, they are staying a little bit later to finish the jobs that they're doing. Okay, not just handing it off to their friends or their other coworkers. And they're doing so hoping that their job is still safe because, like I said, what's going to happen is employers or employees are going to be more willing to work overtime hours because they know they're going to get more money. So why wouldn't I consider working an extra 5 hours this week? Right? It just makes sense. And so that's what we're going to see. That's why some experts are predicting mass layoffs are just around the corner. Once this bill passes, now I'm not saying if it passes, I'm saying once this passes, because I believe the no tax on overtime, no tax on tips is going to pass. It's something that Republicans and Democrats have been saying is a good idea for quite some time. Okay, so when this passes, I don't know. It could be this summer. If if it passes this summer, we are going to see changes happen instantly. So just be prepared because that is coming. Now, as soon as we get more information as to what is going on, how this will impact you, and what the negative effects will be on the U.S. economy, I promise I will bring that to you as soon as possible. But as of today, that is what we know. So again, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.